This is not a samurai sword. Right here. This is not a samurai sword. It, in fact, was made in China. That's right. It was not made by a Japanese swordsman. As you can see, it might look like that. It has a metal blade, right? Metal blade right here. And a wooden sheath, right? You'd think, like, right, ooh, samurai sword. Very neat. No. This was made by a machine that most likely stamps these things out by the thousands, right? Could be made with lead, too. It could be getting all sorts of fancy cancer from just holding this thing. But in no way is it a samurai sword. It is made to look like one, certainly. It slices and dices like one. I assume I haven't killed anyone with it. I don't plan to either. I bought this when I was 26 because I thought it would be cool to own a sword, and it has been. I don't use it for anything, but I look at it and I go, dang, that's cool. And that's it. I don't tell anybody that I'm a samurai. I don't tell anyone I'm trained in how to use this thing. Most of what I know is how to pull it out properly and wave it around. You know, and that's not too different than what you do when you go to the bathroom, right? So in no way am I a samurai just because I carry a sword. Now, if you're not familiar with the history of Yasuke, who is the central character to the Assassin's Creed Shadows game, Yasuke is a Japanese sword bearer, okay? What was important about this role is that you were tasked with carrying your lord or the general or whoever your higher ranking authority that granted you this honor, right? You're in charge of carrying the blade that belongs to them. Now, at the time in feudal Japan, when this happened, the 1500s, mind you, when this happened, metal was very rare in Japan. And so when you made something out of it, they didn't make bullets because those just ended up in the ground somewhere, stuck in a tree or at work, you know, in a body somewhere that they couldn't retrieve them, you know? So they instead made swords, and they embraced them for a very long time. So this right here is an imitation of the most efficient way of killing in feudal Japan, the time of Yasuke, okay? He was tasked with carrying Nobunaga, the daimyo, which is effectively a regional lord, you know, a guy that's not quite the emperor, but might as well be in the power that he commands. Let's put it that way. And so Nobunaga is a daimyo at the time, very important person. And he entrusts Sasuke with carrying the weapon with which he defends his life with. Because in this ancient time, it was believed that people with high-ranking authority shouldn't be tasked with these sort of things. It was kind of like a symbol of opulence, if you will. And so generals and daimyo, shogun, you know, higher-ranking lords that were allowed to carry blades, either by government or by, you know, providence with their family and their clan, or however destiny had played out that allowed them to carry the blade, they usually had someone that carried it for them unless they drew it for ceremony or for battle. And this is what Yasuke's position was. For Nobunaga, Yasuke was the man that carried his blades in the event he wanted to do something ceremonial or the event that he wanted to, you know, have a fight with his blade and kill someone. Because again, this was not drawn for any other reason than for ceremony or murder. You didn't just take it out to pick your teeth, okay, in the reflection on the blade. That's not what happened, right? So Yasuke had a very, very important role, and not only that, a very rare role for A, an outsider, B, an outsider that is not the same race as his lord, and C, a guy that comes from a completely different faith, okay? Nobunaga and Yasuke were not Christian brothers. Yasuke came from a Jesuit temple, church, basically. Nobunaga wanted to own him, not employ him. He was fascinated with what Yasuke looked like. He'd never seen a black man before. And so he was given this very intense role because Nobunaga, again, didn't feel threatened to the point where he needed someone who could defend him carrying that blade as well. But also, it was very rare, if you will, that someone who is not even like a trusted member of the clan ends up carrying these things. So this is what irritates me about what Ubisoft has done here. Now it says, following Assassin's Creed Shadows trailer premiere, the former contractor for Ubisoft reveals a rejected pitch for a more historically accurate franchise entry. I guess they tossed that all out for a black samurai, says this Twitter poster. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But I wanted to point out, Yasuke was not a samurai. He was never granted that title. He was a sword bearer, a very, very important role. Not as important as samurai, don't get me wrong. But the West likes to abuse Japan's culture. If you notice, there's not that many goofy kung fu movies with white guys in them lately. There's not a lot of that one with Chris Farley there, Beverly Hills Ninja. Not a lot of that going around. There's not a lot of Kabuki Cop going around anymore. No, is there? You know, this kind of thing. But they like to screw around. The West likes to screw around with Japan's culture. You don't see them doing that with China anymore now that China's trying to be a superpower. You don't see them screwing around with Korea's culture. You don't see them screwing around with India's culture. We had that like one Mike Myers movie that made fun of gurus, and that was about it. That was the summation of abusing, if you will, the Indian culture. But Japan's like this little sandbox, this little fan fiction playground that writers and creators in the West just really just want to, take apart and insert their own fan fiction into. Yasuke, excuse me, Sasuke, remember that? Yasuke, to my knowledge, is the first historically accurate character that you play, like an actual person that walked the earth that you play. There have been historical characters in the franchise, but they are NPC characters that are carrying out the plot. You, the player, have traditionally played a wholly, entirely fictional character. And it's very strange that they have chosen Yasuke to do this rather than just make up a black samurai. I'm not sure what was less likely in their mind, but I want to bring this to your attention. If you're not familiar with the Assassin's Creed franchise, consider this. In order for these people in the future, which is roughly our timeline, to get back in time, they have to climb into a device known as the Animus Chair that regresses their consciousness through an alien device into a genetic ancestor in the past to fight other people who are interested in this alien tech and want to abuse humanity using it, known as the Templar, okay? So what is more likely? A man in the future, roughly our timeline, climbs into the Animus Chair and somehow goes back to the only black samurai in feudal Japan, who, by the way, Yasuke didn't, run away and start a family or anything. And when Nobunaga was assassinated, he attempted to save Nobunaga's son's life, but he had no training. So while he was able to wave the sword around and keep these men at bay, one of the generals of the opposing clan stepped forward and said, no, put your blade down, just surrender. You don't know what you're doing. This isn't worth it. And because Yasuke wasn't Japanese, they deemed him to be inferior. You have to remember, the Japanese are not like a Gap ad. They're not like, hey, cool, everybody's diverse and that's wonderful. No, they have the opinion that Japanese is best. That's it. They don't, that's their opinion. And they're okay to have that. That's perfectly fine. They try to go out into the world and prove it every day, which is great, in my opinion. Everyone should go out and try to prove that they're the best. So this is what it is, though. Is that it doesn't make sense to me that a guy in the future regresses back into the singular black samurai in the feudal Japan's history, okay? In Japan, I think in Japan's history, period. And samurai, samurai. Because he carried a sword, Or is it more likely, right, that a person of color in the future, a black guy, black girl, some African descended person, right, climbs into the Animus Chair, and genetically alien technology regresses into one of Nobunaga's generals or supporters or whatever, right? That seems to make a lot more sense to me that there would be a genetic precursor who was native to Japan than a genetic precursor who was not, okay? But again, I've talked about this for a little while now, so we'll get into the original pitch and we'll take a look at it here. So back in about 10 years ago, this was the pitch for it, okay? And so this comes to us from Infinite Chronicles over at Infinite Comic. Just check it out. This person was apparently contracted by Ubisoft to come up with a plot for a feudal Japan-based Assassin's Creed game, okay? So this is how it went as it was pitched. The plot focused on a young monk, Yamauchi Taka, as the playable character. Taka means hawk to coincide with the then naming convention of every playable hero being named after a bird of prey. No idea if that changed with all these newer disjointed games that no longer have Desmond as the core hero that bound everything together. Yeah, if you don't know, that's over with. See, I kept on with it till Assassin's Creed 3. I liked Connor. Connor was fun. I appreciated the story that Connor went through, and if you know a few things about George Washington, it kind of made sense that he was a secret Templar in the story, not in real life. Okay? The main conflict was the Sword of Eden, and this is and how it had given the latest wielder, Oda Nobunaga, the figure that had given Yasuke this honorable role, an unfair advantage in his conquest of Japan. After Nobunaga is assassinated by Hattori Hanzo, Taka becomes a part of the Brotherhood, and under Hanzo is trained as an assassin, shinobi, as the Japanese refer to them. The Brotherhood try to transport the recovered sword out of Japan, but are beset by Templar ships, and it is lost. To make matters worse, Hanzo is assassinated as he considers retirement as a monk. His lord, Tokugawa Ieyasu, charges Taka with finding the killer and recovering the sword. Despite Nobunaga's successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, acquiring the sword and going on a rampage that extends into Korea, Taka steals the sword back, and the mad daimyo loses his power, weakening his campaign in Korea. Incensed by the theft, Toyotomi believes he was betrayed by the Templars and basically exterminates them in Japan. Taka infiltrates Toyotomi's castle and faces him in a final battle, resulting in Toyotomi's death. The ambitious daimyo is left to die as Taka slips away before his retainers could intercept him. The now seasoned assassin spares Toyotomi's infant heir, knowing the clan has lost its teeth and will eventually wither without Hideyoshi. Ieyasu begins his ambitious power grab, demanding Taka and the Brotherhood give him the sword and help him wipe away all of his enemies from Japan to fully unite it under the banners of his clan and his clan alone. Taka and the Brotherhood decline and vanish into the shadows with the sword. Oh well, Black Samurai and Kunoichi, though. That's neat, I guess, right? Here's the other thing, okay? If you don't know, this is something that a lot of people don't know because it's not like it's hidden in Japan, but it's just not something that's on the surface area. It's a very conflicting time, and if you don't know, the Japanese aren't very hitherto ready to go talking about conflict and things that are uncomfortable. It's not really anybody's forte, but particularly the Japanese have a non-confrontational kind of way of dealing with this. Culture in general, regular interaction. So the situation with this, though, is that samurai and ninja do not get along. The ninja exist because during the feudal times of Japan, the feudal era of Japan, which is where this game takes place, the samurai were very abusive. The daimyos were very abusive. There were some samurai, not all of them, but there were some samurai that tortured the peasantry, that extorted money and favor out of them, and even demanded virgin daughters in order to keep the samurai and their retainers from coming through and obliterating a farmer's land or a town. This group of people that had settled in the space anyway. And this is some. This isn't all. And so out of that was born the ninja, who did not effectively usurp the Japanese government the way the American revolutionaries did with the British. But they pushed back on the abuse of the samurai in such a way that it forced a change in the behavior of the lords and the daimyos, so that the peasantry was at least treated a little bit better than what they were before the ninja came along. And the threat of the ninja also kept the samurai going forward until they were eventually outmoded by, a more modern government. I think a normal police force showed up in the Meiji era. I'm not 1000% sure. I don't have my book in front of me right now to cite when that actually came around, like official police force, like what we would recognize as uniform, badge, guy that says, hey, don't do that, police officer. I think that was the Meiji era. I could be wrong. But again, the samurai and the ninja do not get along. You're asking a redcoat and American revolutionary to have fun together, and that does not work. That is peanut butter and glass. In this era especially, a ninja would not be pairing up with a samurai. The samurai would be 1000% geared against whatever the assassin wants to do. Because the samurai currently is at the apex, close to the apex of their power in Japan at this time. The game is literally built just to check off DEI BlackRock checklist. That's it. It's just there to make sure, okay, we got this and that and that. Oh, okay, we've got the girl character who's a boss in it. Neat. And that's where we're at. That's what you're looking at with this whole Assassin's Creed Shadows. Oh, it's not really. It's not a Desmond game. It's not like in line with the real story or whatever. That's the way of getting around acknowledging that they're just abusing Japanese culture. They won't do this to another culture. You didn't see the Egyptian assassin being a different nationality. He didn't come from Britain or France or the Byzantines, or he didn't come from India. No, he was Egyptian. You didn't see any of the other characters over the years be from a different country, but here is Yasuke being from a different country. The Japanese themselves don't like this. You can go on over to Twitter and search it on their end. You could search the kanji and check it out. Yellow Flash did a video about this as well, where he brings up the comments. And this is what it is. The Japanese are thoroughly confused why Ubisoft went and made a game about the history of Japan and went and put the singular black samurai as the main character. I get it. We had Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai play a white guy. This is a semi-historically accurate event that happened. But again, I really don't like it when this happens. Japan's for the Japanese. Let them have it. Let them enjoy their culture. We enjoy their culture. I enjoy their culture. But it's theirs. It's not mine. I'm not going to take a historical figure from their past like this and warp him around a political agenda, some socio-political engineering nonsense. And neither should you. I don't think anybody should really invest in this game, honestly, to teach Ubisoft the same lesson that Sony learned. That you just can't abuse this stuff and expect people to be down with it. I would really prefer if they went, whoops, we're going to make this a DLC, an extra part of the game. We're going to go back to the drawing board and embrace this original plan with Taka. And we'll check back with you when we have the real Assassin's Creed Shadows finished. That would have been far, far better. Because, again, we can enjoy a side story of Yasuke making use of the sword that Nobunaga is allowing him to carry. That's not unheard of. I mean, it's very dishonorable, but it is not unheard of. I think that's what he did anyway. When Nobunaga was assassinated, I think Yasuke used his sword to defend Nobunaga's son. Again, I don't have my culture book in front of me to cite it to know for sure. You can Google all this stuff and check it out. Again, you're not going to see these people abuse any other culture like this. Maybe, again, maybe the British, maybe the Europeans. But for whatever reason, they think the Japanese are open season too. And I don't like it. I don't like it any more than having the Viking gods rewritten to be different races and things like that, or the Greek gods done like this. The world is a very big place. Make a new character. Make a new mythology. It's not that hard. But until the next video, good luck out there.